Hello folks, Phil Gallagher, aka ThrabenU here for another Legacy video. Today's video, as always, is sponsored by Moxfield.com. Before I get started here, I just want to let you know today is going to be the last gameplay video of this year. For my final video of the year, I have something a little special for tomorrow. You might have to manually find that one. I don't know if it'll do well with the algorithm, but check the channel tomorrow. There's going to be something you'll probably want to see if you're a regular viewer. All right. Today we're playing with a really neat deck list. This one is from Damien, who wanted me to play Mono Black Initiative Depths. This is going to be either absolute genius or absolute jank, and I'm not sure which side of the jankometer we're going to be on today. So let's kind of break down the different parts that we have going on here. We have the classic Legacy combo of Dark Depths and Thespian Stage, or alternatively, Dark Depths and Vampire Hexmage. We're looking to remove the ice counters from this to make a 2020 flying tentacle monster that can kill our opponents in a single shot. If this doesn't work, our plan Bs can include taking the initiative and creating a very large scaling life-linking creature that can take over the games, or otherwise be kind of a light control deck with annoying things like Sheoldred and Opposition Agent disrupting our opponent's abilities to do what their deck wants to do, and we'll have this backed by other disruption like Thoughtseize and Hymn to Turok, as well as some other ways to grind value like Urza's Saga. We have a playset of my favorite Magic card of all time in this deck list, Vampire Nighthawk. And I was a little skeptical about this at first, but like obviously it's one of my favorite cards of all time, so like it's not like I'm going to cut it. But one thing that's kind of interesting here, in the world of the initiative, having main deck flyers is really nice because like your mono white and your red white initiative decks don't really have very many flyers. So it's just an evasive way to kind of take the initiative back. And looking to the sideboard, having some pro white creatures is also going to help with that. Kind of highlighting the spice of the sideboard, I'd probably say that that's Sorin the Mirthless, which can minus to make some Vampire Nighthawk-sized creatures, or can plus as a way to get some card advantage. I've never ultimated this Planeswalker in Legacy, but, you know, at some point, maybe we will get to deal 13 damage to something. But a lot of times, one way or another, if I end up activating this Sorin twice, I've often found that, like, that often gives me the edge, like the push I need to get over the line. In terms of mana bases, one thing that I want to talk about here is the entire playset of Urborg Tomb of Yawgmoth. In Mono Black decks, this is a staple because it turns whatever utility lands you are into something that actually gets to tap for black. Here, if we take a quick look, we have 4 Dark Depths, 4 Thespian Stages, and 4 Urza's Saga, none of which actually tap for black mana. So Urborg is going to do a lot of heavy lifting in this deck, and although some hands that have multiple Urborgs might be awkward, it's probably worth the deck building cost to just play the full playset, because it allows for some of your fastest goldfishes. A turn 1 Dark Depths or turn 2 Urborg, or vice versa, allows you to play Vampire Hexmage and make a 20/20 on turn 2. So we're going to see if our ability to make fast 20/20s, to grind out games with the initiative, and to have like these assorted death-touching and disruptive creatures backed by discard ends up being a cohesive plan, or if we're just pulled in too many directions and this doesn't really do anything. I'm excited to give this one a go. If you're new here and you like what you see, please consider subscribing for more. And if you're a regular, throw me a like before this video begins. It's one of the easiest ways to support my content for free. Let's Nighthawk. Okay, this is a pretty fair looking hand. I think on the play I will keep a hand that just gets to go turn 1 Thoughtseize, turn 2 Thoughtseize, and Currency Converter. Like, I think I'm just gonna call that good enough. Oh, it's legit Rug Delver. So I can take something else next turn. I might just want to take the Brainstorm here, the thing that can clean up my opponent's hand the most, and protect whatever second card they want to hide from Thoughtseize. I'm not sure if I will intentionally try to get my Currency Converter dazed. Like, it is a reasonable Magic card, but I don't know that it's overly exciting here. You may ponder. Alright, no shuffle off the ponder. They like what they have. I think I'm just going to play another Womp here. Try to Thought Seize my opponent. It does work. I think I just take their threat despite the fact that I have a Death Toucher. So now I know the exact contents of their hand. I think I'm just gonna offer this up as Daze Bait. I don't really want to be sinking a bunch of mana into this currency converter right now. Like, the average card that I am going to draw is so much better than currency converter. And if I get a Force of Will happening on Vampire Nighthawk, like, that's kind of cool. Alright. Vampire Nighthawk has arrived. Would you like to Force of Will? No is the answer. I believe that's the correct answer. At some point you just cantrip for a Lightning Bolt and answer this card. But I'm hoping to gain a decent amount of life before that happens. Seems like my opponent has drawn Murktide Regent, which is annoying. However, that is a great top deck for me. We're just going to make this right now because of Wasteland. I keep the one with no ice counters. Allows me to make a 20/20, and I'm comfortable crashing in with Vampire Nighthawk here, I believe. A 20/20 blocker held back. I know 3 of my opponent's 4 cards. There's probably a 1 of Brazen Borrower as an out to this creature. Otherwise, they just get to chump block with Murktide Regent once as a redraw. Okay. Okay. I feel robbed. Alright. Let's play another Nighthawk. The Force of Will pitching a Spell Pierce. My opponent's final card is another Force of Will. That's fine. And now the Vampire Nighthawk is going to be on defensive duty. Okay, sure. Not too worried right now, but my opponent is absolutely in the favored position with this bonus card just kind of hanging out in exile. Alright. Let's drop a Vampire Hexmage into play. That will make another top decked Dark Depths very good if it resolves. Sure. Alright, there is the Brazen Borrower from exile. Now my opponent can just attack with this as to not expose the Murktide Regent to removal. I do unfortunately think that I have to bite on that block. Dark Ritual is not what we are looking for right now. I am looking for one of my 4 Sudden Edicts. I am on a 3-turn clock right now. Now Sudden Edict is not live anymore. Expedition Map is an okay draw. Let's go searching. I believe it's Dark Depths, as then I can draw either Thespian Stage or Vampire Hexmage to pair with it. I am going to play it out now. My opponent wastelands, they wasteland. But because Thespian Stage requires a land drop slot, I have to play it out this turn. I will take the 6 damage. And I drew a blank. I will concede. I mean, I feel like we got super unlucky there. Like, my opponent just naturally had the, presumably, 1 of Brazen Borrower in hand at exactly the right moment. Delavi. Okay. Leyline of the Void is pretty reasonable tech here. Plague Engineer is playable as a Death Toucher for things like Tarmogoyf. Thorin's not crazy, but I'm not sure that I want to go up to CMC 4 here. So I think I'm considering these 6 cards. I don't think I'm interested in Currency Converter in this matchup. It feels pretty slow. Pithing Needle for Wasteland is a thing that I need to be thinking about. I don't think I'm trying to get my opponent with Opposition Agent here. I would need 3 more cuts still. How do I feel about introducing the initiative? Not the best, but like it is a scaling lifelinker. Like that's very much a thing that matters. Maybe I'll go down on Discard. My life total is kind of precious. I can go down on Thoughtseize or Hymn to Turok. Hymn's not great versus a bunch of random Spell Pierce effects. I could see playing something kind of like this. Keep some Thoughtseizes here. I might get rid of all of my Thoughtseizes on the draw. Not quite. This is the sort of reason why we play 4 Urborgs, is to make hands like that more capable when they happen. This hand is perfectly reasonable. I think I will keep the Flying Death Touchers over the Plague Engineer. I'm going to need 1 more land as this game goes on. Although I will certainly take more lands. Okay, no initial threat from my opponent, just a land drop here. I think I am fine just playing this into Daze, given that I have 3 drops in hand. Like, Daze is getting something at some point in the game. Might as well get that out of their hand now and keep something like a Tarmogoyf from immediately hitting the board. If my opponent had played out a creature, I just would have sudden edicted this turn. Surgical Extraction on Vampire Hexmage after a long tank. Luckily, my deck attacks from multiple different fronts, so it's not like losing that is like the death knell for me or anything like that. Okay, sure. My cat has like gotten hold of a hair tie and has gotten it. Oh, my cat has retrieved the hair tie from under the office door. Things are back to normal. But that was incredibly distracting as his little paw was just like trying to get the hair tie. All right, no shuffle there. I unfortunately have missed this land drop, so I got all these vampire shamans chilling in my hand. Nowhere to go. Or I guess fortunately, my opponent doesn't have anything interesting showing. But they chose not to shuffle with the Ponder, so presumably there's a good card just chilling on top of their library here. Okay, sure. It was just a Delver. That's not really a big deal. I think I just edict that right now. Tempting to play out map, but Spell Pierce is a thing over there, so I think I'm just going to do this and keep my opponent from looking at the top card and potentially fetching it away with Polluted Delta. Fetching it away anyway. Set up their Ponder properly. Okay, sure. So we're chilling now. I can play an Urza Saga. I think it's correct for me to play Expedition Map around Spell Pierce here. Alright, so that's resolved. Now my opponent can Wasteland this Urza Saga, and then I can just Expedition Map for another one and try to play a nice mid-range game versus my opponent. It'll give me time to draw into more lands to actually deploy a whole bunch of Vampire Nighthawks. Alright. My opponent is having all the right cards at exactly the right time today. I'm going to trade with this Spell Pierce here. So let's try to bait this out. Success. And I'll pass the turn. Alright, Brainstorm is very good for my opponent here. Oh, but no fetch. That's fine. Let's start playing out Nighthawks. Force of Will and a Stifle. Absolutely accept that 2-for-1 here. Okay. No play from my opponent yet again. Very frustrating. Alright, like I'm chilling. Another Brainstorm. And there's a follow-up Tarmogoyf. I will go ahead and just use my mana efficiently here and Sudden Edict that 6/7 out of the way. Alright. This is Urza Saga and pass. And this probably takes over the game pretty easily if I don't get just like wastelanded here. Like my opponent has found a Murktide Regent. Deathing Needle is not overly exciting here, but solid. So we will shut off my opponent's wastelands. And now I have to play this like game of like Stifle versus Meltdown. I think I'm going to make this now to not give them opportunities to cantrip towards another Stifle. That turns on some sorcery speed nonsense in a way that I'm not super fond of. I have to decide how I'm trying to win this game. I can try to win this game with constructs and just get Shadow Spear here. Just make a construct, they're 3/3s, get Shadow Spear, they're 4/4s, play Dark Depths and equip. That's 5. I gain 5 life. I go back up to 15. I think that's more reliable than trying to go for this Expedition Map thing against an 8/8. Go ahead and make my token. Sure. That's frustrating. I'll attack in for 3. Get 1 draw to have something that deals with Murktide Regent. I take 8 here. I am dead to a Lightning Bolt. And hit a Stage or a Sudden Edict. I hit a Swamp. I feel like I played that one okay. And just like didn't hit that land drop I needed to deploy my cards. and my opponent had a couple just perfect cards at perfect times. Such is life. Today's video is sponsored by Moxfield.com. Moxfield is a deck building website for Magic the Gathering, although they do a lot more. For example, do you like Wordle, but wish it was with Magic cards? Moxfield has such a thing that they call Moxel. So if you want to have a little bit of fun and rack your brain while thinking about 5-lettered Magic cards, please consider checking out this website and maybe check out the deck building stuff while you're there. All right, round 2. I'm on the draw. I really need more mana here for this hand to be functional. If I had one more land, I would probably just keep because I can play like Shadow Spear and Pithing Needle and then start doing Urza Saga nonsense. I don't think I want to risk it though, because if I miss out on this land drop, I just run into the disappearing land problem with Urza's Saga. Ooh, buddy. This hand sure does not really cast its spells. On 6, I think I accept this. I'm very much not excited about it though. I think I'm going to keep this and pitch one of the black cards. It may be better to just go to 5 with this hand. Ooh, buddy. It may be that whatever I did, it just didn't matter. So combo or initiative? Combo. Backing both Lotus Petals for Undercity Informer. My opponent has to pass the turn, so there's that. But on my opponent's turn, they just sacrifice Undercity Informer, and they're going to mill their entire deck into their graveyard and put a Thassa's Oracle into play via Dread Return. Given that I know that's what's going to happen, I'm going to go ahead and concede here so that my opponent has no information about what deck I'm playing. And we're going to sideboard in some Leyline of the Voids, Mindbreak Trap, and Grief. Turok is technically a way to disrupt my opponent's hand. I don't know that that's actually going to make the cut. So Plague Engineer for Narcomoeba is something that seems cool in theory, but this deck often runs Bridge from Below as a way to kind of stop that nonsense from happening. Generally speaking, anything that is slow probably goes. So I think Currency Converter, Vampire Nighthawk kind of fit that category. Sudden Edict is not doing stuff in most cases. Like, I know that my opponent just played out a creature and passed the turn, but that's not going to be the norm. I'm probably not going to play these. I'm going to think about it for a minute, though, because it's not like some of my 4-drops are particularly strong. Sort this by mana value here. I think I'm not going to try to have Sudden Edict in my hand at the right time. I think I'm just going to value just having things that attack my opponent. Yes. Which land I play on turn 1 is actually really interesting. If I play Dark Depths on turn 1, I have a 4 in 53 chance of drawing Urborg. And if I do that, I just get to make a 20/20 on turn 2. So, like, there's that. As a counterpoint, though, if I draw any black source and I play Swamp on turn 1, I can cast Vampire Hexmage on turn 2 and start going at my opponent's life total. So I think I am actually going to go that route. Alright, cool. Didn't see an end of turn Force of Vigor or anything like that. So that's nice. Okay. I'm gonna lose one of my things here. Probably the Hexmage. Good old Sheoldred the Apocalypse. That will clock pretty hard. Oh, there's the Force of Vigor. Let's see if I'm dead. My opponent has told me they liked my podcast, so I think that means I'm dead. Yeah, there is the Undercity Former. Note that if I did have Sudden Edict, them casting the Lotus Petal at that spot would have cost them the game. And here is the Narcomoebas. There's the Thassa's Oracle in Graveyard. Let's find the Dread Return. There's the Dread Return. I will go ahead and concede. GG's. Okay, looking at my mana here, I just don't have enough. I'm going to mulligan. Turn 1 Thoughtseize. Turn 2 Urza Saga, Dark Ritual, Passageway Seer. That is reasonable. I think Vampire Nighthawk is the odd man out here. Because if I hit another land, my mana is going to be tied up in Urza Saga in the short term. Oh no. Okay, it is Moon Stompy this time. Well, Oh shit, okay. This is great for me. This is actually factually great for me. So, a lot of this depends on whether or not my opponent can play another creature. If they can't play another creature, on my next turn, I play Dark Depths and then Sudden Edict away Magus. I guess I need to Thoughtseize them and take a creature and hope that they don't have two different playable creatures. Okay. Okay. This game rides on whether or not my opponent top decks a 3-mana creature. Holy shit. Don't do it. Don't do it. Fuck yeah. Let's go. Alright. Play Dark Depths. Pass the turn. I don't need to do this immediately, I guess. Although I suppose I do because they have that mountain. So let's Sudden Edict this Magus of the Moon. And notice that my Dark Depths entered with no counters on it. Meaning that it immediately becomes a 2020 Merit Lage creature token. And my opponent's very strong start has completely backfired on them. If you want an example about like how your knowledge of Magic can help benefit you as a player, that's a great example. Like, I was able to do that line because I knew how like Dark Depths interacted with Magus of the Moon. So if you are a constructed player and you have the opportunity to study up on a little bit about how like rules work within your format, I highly encourage you to do so. Okay. Generally speaking here, I think my plan is don't die. I think if I get to the late game, like these life linkers, these death touchers, these generally large creatures are going to line up well versus my opponent's threats. I think Thoughtseize and other 1-drops should probably be trimmed in respect of Chalice of the Void. I very much want Plague Engineer for opposing Goblin tokens. I think I want Turok just as a straight-up creature that can trade with early creatures from my opponent. And I think I'm interested in Sorin just to create some extra bodies. What about Pithing Needle? Pithing Needle's pretty weak. Planeswalkers are less common than they used to be, so it would be shutting off things like Den of the Bugbear. I'm not really into that. I might just play Caracas as one more additional generic colorless land over the Pithing Needle. I can keep one Pithing Needle for like Fable of the Mirrorbreaker. Random currency converter better. I don't really think so. I think this is just going to be a 25th land for me. I think that's better than boarding in like a random grief. Question mark, question mark, question mark. Yes, this hand is totally solid. Turn 1 Dark Ritual, Plague Engineer on Goblin. Turn 2 Sudden Edict a threat. Turn 3 Vampire Nighthawk. It also just like conveniently has 3 swamps for if my opponent has a Magus or Blood Moon opener. Alright. What do you got for me? Simeon Spirit Guide into turn 1 Blood Moon. Ooh. Turn 2 Turok as him to Turok is interesting, but my opponent might deploy the vast majority of their hand here. They don't sometimes, though, is a thing. I think I'm going to go ahead and just do this on Goblin. Not 100% sure that's correct because of cards like Dead Gone, but my opponent is using turns to play Dead Gone instead of more impactfully impacting the board. I guess that's good for me. Alright, there is a Fable of the Mirrorbreaker. I want to get rid of that token. I think I do. I could accidentally get Furied if I don't get rid of it. Yeah, I get to stay on the beatdown plan a little bit better if I get rid of this. Like, I can play this into Vampire Nighthawk, and then end up with a Turok that maybe gets a little bit bigger. I could have also just played out Turok to throw it to Fable. That was a line that I didn't immediately consider. Alice is fine with me. Here's an Urza Saga. Don't want to play that land. That just goes immediately to the graveyard if you have Blood Moon. And we'll floop a Vampire Nighthawk into play. If my opponent has any cards in hand as of end of turn, I will take them out with Turok on my turn. That's very much not guaranteed, though. Vampire Hexmage can remove stuff from Chalice. I guess pre-combat Turok? Alright. Oh, Fiery Confluence. Absolutely. Absolutely happy to take that down there. I'll bash in for 4 points of damage. I've got 8 points of damage the following turn. Okay, cool. Like, we dodged that Fiery Confluence. That was pretty important. Extra Urza Sagas aren't particularly good for me. Send them. Alright, there's a block on the Turok. This is 8 damage on board. If my opponent draws a Fiery Confluence, they can wipe my board. I think I'm going to hold back the Vampire Hexmage here, so that I have something that I can play after a Fiery Confluence. It may mean that I don't kill my opponent on the next attack if they play out a creature. Magus is fine. There's a Dark Depths, so that can have 0 counters on it. I don't think I want to trade Plague Engineer for Magus. I think I'm just going to present my opponent with a non-lethal attack here. Kind of puts them back in the same spot as last turn, where they're still dead on board, and I'm going to just kind of continue to try to play around a sweeper. Spirit Guide's fine. Thorin the Mirthless. Yeah. So this time I can attack with all of them because the block on Barak is obligatory. Otherwise my opponent dies here. Yep. Go to 2. I'll go ahead and drop a Sorin the Mirthless. Since, like, I very much have lethal, I'm just going to draw a card here. Yeah. That can go into my hand. I know it doesn't do anything right now because of Chalice, but I just want that off the top of my library. Alright, and we've played that game in a very controlling fashion. GG's. Alright, round 4. I think this is a keep. It's a little bit of a mishmash of cards, but I think this ends up going somewhere enough of the time that I'm happy enough keeping it. I've got some draws that are significantly better than other draws here. Let's see what my opponent is doing. Delver time? It is Delver O'Clock again. Alright, and Bobble. Thoughtseize. But I rather Thoughtseize this turn. Urza Saga situation is really weird. I can Thoughtseize, play it around days. I can Expedition Map and just search up another black source. I think I just want to search up another black source here. Try to play an Urza Saga game. This also baits out a Wasteland. At the cost of potentially getting stifled, I think I am not going to make the decision about what to Expedition Map until a little bit later, because I might change my mind about what I get if Urza Saga gets Wastelanded. Ponder is the reveal. And there is the Ponder. Okay, there is the Wasteland. I'll go ahead and eat the 3 damage. I will crack my Expedition Map. I think I just need some mana stability here. I think I'm going to go with Swamp over Urborg. So a follow-up Wasteland is less good, but Swamp making Dark Depths tap for mana is kind of huge here. So JK, I think I am going to get Urborg. Yeah, we knew that was coming. Ooh, that's really good. That will be my play in this turn cycle. We're very much hoping not to get Wastelanded. Like, we'll see if this Urborg bites me in the butt. But, like, getting Urborg lets me play Vampire Hexmage around days, for example. Or play Thoughtseize into Hexmage. I feel pretty good about that decision overall. Like, despite the risk factors associated with the play. Goodbye, Delver. Are we facing down an immediate Murktide Regent? Forecast says likely. Now, it is a small Murktide Regent, for what it's worth. So let's Thoughtseize, see if we can clear the way of counter spells. There is a Force of Will and a Daze, so I can't fully clear the way this turn. I will be taking the Force of Will here. And we'll make Swamp as our land drop. And call it a turn. The next turn I can play around Daze, although Expressive Iteration could find my opponent another Force of Will. Alright, there it is. Not sure if I just want to, like, play some Vampire Nighthawks. Like, use those as distractions in the short term. And then try to win with Vampire Hexmage Dark Depths in the long term instead. There's some amount of risk associated with, like, going down this path, because, like, if my opponent counters this or lightning bolts me, it's 4 points of damage. Oh, now we don't care about the counter spells. think I do play this out now. Vampire Hexmage, number 1. This is forcing a fetch and a brainstorm. Are we resolving? We're resolving. I will be making this immediately because of Wasteland. And now I'm going to go ahead and play another Vampire Hexmage. I don't care if this gets dazed, because if this doesn't win the game, I'd rather resolve Vampire Nighthawks next turn. Fate successful. This also takes a land out of play, which is relevant for, like, Mystic Sanctuary and Expressive Iteration into something, or, like, Ponder into something. Show me your Brazen Borrower. Motherfuck! Ah! This Delver deck is some bullshit. That's very frustrating. Like, that is twice where I have, like, set up, what a fucking follow-up tilt. That is twice where I have set up these situations where I win unless my opponent has, like, the one of in their deck that beats me, and they've had it across 2 separate opponents. Ugh. Top deck Dark Depths there is rude. I still really like my play from last turn, and, like, I would run that back. But what a tilt. Alright. Please don't bolt my Nighthawk. I kinda need this to live so I can start gaining some life. Like, 7 is a scary place to be. Okay, we're just gonna trade. I'm good with that. So that puts me to 9, which is a 3-turn clock for the purposes of Brazen Borrower. The issue here is, like, I know that they have access to another Murktide Regent. Dragon Rage Channeler. Okay, we're not immediately Murktide Regenting. It's possible that that went back with the previous Brainstorm, I suppose. Alright, Mystic Sanctuary is now gone from the Surveil. Okay, sure. Follow-up Murktide here would be rough. It looks like that is indeed what's happening. And it's a thick boy. Sudden Edict is a really good draw. So I can play this Vampire Nighthawk, trade with one of these, and attempt to Edict the other out of play before Brazen Borrower gets into play. The issue here is twofold. Number 1, Lightning Bolt is lethal as of right now. Number 2, if my opponent's sorcery speeds Brazen Borrower to play around Sudden Edict, yep. Alright. GG. So kind of like before, I probably want Leyline of the Void as my starting point. Here we're not facing down as many ground-based threats like Tarmogoyf, so Plague Engineer is playable but maybe not exciting. And the tokens from Sorin the Mirthless don't have Death Touch like Vampire Nighthawk does. I don't know how interested in those I actually am. I need to board out at least 4 cards. Expect to be cutting Currency Converter in most rounds. Not the biggest fan of the discard. On the play, the hymns are a little bit more reasonable. I keep Needle for Wasteland. Not the biggest fan of Opposition Agent. And I might cut one random piece of discard and call something approximating this okay. Yeah, this is a totally solid hand. I naturally drew the Shadow Spear a few turns from now. Urza Saga is probably getting a Pithing Needle for a Wasteland. It's currently my plan to play Urza Saga on turn 2. Like, play Urza Saga and then Sudden Edict away a Delver or Dragon Rage Channeler or whatever. Dark Depths as my draw for turn is not bad. That probably makes me want to shift away from playing Urza Saga immediately. I don't know, though. I can play Urza Saga as Wasteland bait. Kind of like that. I'm holding up Sudden Edict in this turn cycle, and I'm working on protecting these more valuable lands. Brainstorm's fine. Alright, follow-up land drop has been achieved. We'll see if my opponent plays a 1-drop this turn. Seems like no. Vampire Nighthawk. A fine draw that I'm not really ready to play out as of right now. Let's go in on this Urza Saga mid-range plan for a little while, and then we can pivot into Dark Depths combo a little bit later on in this match. Alright, there's the fetch for the Brainstorm. Straight up Lightning Bolt my face. That's potentially indicative of a Murktide Regent happening. And they just want another instant in the graveyard. Alright, yeah, there is the Murktide Regent. Do I want a 2/2 token? Yeah, I'll just take the value off of that. I don't think I need to sudden edict that creature right now. Okay, they're going for my stage instead. Sure. Another sudden edict. I think I will just go ahead and sudden edict with my mana this turn. Yeah. Have a Pithing Needle here. Set off Wasteland. And kind of hope I don't get meltdowned here. Would be good. Bash in for 3. Opponent goes to 15. Dragon Rage Channeler is solid. See if there's a follow-up spell. It's a little bit annoying that they always have it. Play Counterable Nighthawk this turn, or just keep the board clear. I'd love to just trade Nighthawk for Dragon Rage Channeler, but I think it might be correct to just keep my opponent from surveilling. Alright, there's a Murktide Regent as follow-up. I mean, show me your Brazen Borrower. We're doing this again. Here we go. There's my 2020. Like, if you have both the Meltdown and the Petty Theft in, like, a continuous turn cycle to answer everything that I've been setting up all game, like, so fucking be it. But I've played it around Wasteland. Okay, seems like we are in a chump block situation. So they will get one more turn to attempt to answer the stuff that I have going on. Alright, goodbye Murktide Regent. And we'll attempt to play a Vampire Nighthawk. This card isn't really anything more than a distraction right now. Hardcast Daze is acceptable. Like, I want to clear Dazes and such out of my opponent's hand so I can attempt to play a Passageway Seer if this game continues on. Alright. This is probably it, right? This is 3 looks at Brazen Borrower. Brazen Borrower. Alright. I think I just attempt to take the initiative here. This doesn't play around Daze, but this play is so good if it works, because I get to play this turn. And, yeah, sure. And then follow up with Vampire Nighthawk to stop Brazen Borrower from attacking in the following turn cycle. Alright, there's a Delver, and my opponent can play Brazen Borrower end of turn. I will play my thing that will trade with one of my opponent's creatures, and we'll try to save this Vampire Hexmage for a little bit later. I don't think my opponent should be wastelanding this Urborg. I think they should save that for an Urza Saga or a potential combo piece. We'll see how they feel about it on their turn, though. Like, I do have, like, 4-drop initiative cards they've seen. I don't think they've seen Sheoldred yet. Flip to Lightning Bolt. Fuck. Yeah. So I am dead in 2 more turns. Given that, my opponent might decide to wasteland me. No. I will play an Expedition map. I guess I don't have to make the well, I can play the land drop right now, actually, so that does matter. I guess I get a Dark Depths, play a Dark Depths, cast a Vampire Hexmage. My Dark Depths gets wastelanded in response, and then I can draw another one next turn. Not really how I want that to go. But otherwise, my opponent sitting on the wasteland is, like, catastrophic for me. There's EI number 3. I think that's it, folks. Don't imagine that I beat that next EI. I'll try, though, like I do technically have outs here. It requires my opponent to have nothing in their 3 cards in hand. Oh. Let's get a Murktide Regent. Mystic Sanctuary. Oh, for a Lightning Bolt, and then they'll cantrip into the Lightning Bolt to kill my Vampire Hexmage. Okay, no, it is Murktide Regent. Sure. So I can play Passageway Seer, and I'm very dead in the air, unfortunately. GG's. Okay, I'm not really sure what to think of this opening hand. So I go turn 1, probably Swamp Map. Turn 2, Urza Saga Currency Converter? Question mark. And start making construct tokens after that. I just feel like this hand is clunky. Like, I have a reasonable mix of hands and, like, lands and spells, but I just don't really feel like this is winning on the draw. I just don't think we're a good Urza Saga deck without Ancient Tomb. I think I'm just gonna mulligan this one. Okay. Yes. Deep? How the fuck am I playing this hand? So, unquestionably, these 3 cards are sticking around. And it's just a question of, like, do I want to play an initiative creature on turn 1? I can have 5 mana on turn 1 and just play Passageway Seer on turn 1 if I throw back him to Torok. Or I can get rid of 1 Dark Ritual, play him on turn 1, Passageway Seer on turn... No, that won't work. Wow, this hand's tough. Timestamp this, let me know what you think the mulligan decision is in the comments. I think I'm going to get rid of the him and play the initiative card on turn 1. Alright, there's an island. Ooh. If I wait till turn 2, I can use 1 Dark Ritual on Passageway Seer instead of using 2 to play it on turn 1. This will be significantly better versus like a Force of Will or Spell Pierce. So I think I'm going to do that and pivot from the initial plan. This also allows me to just make a turn 3 Merit Lodge off the second Dark Ritual. We're presumably playing against some sort of like blue-white control deck. Okay. We've got some Passageway Seers, folks. Let's go. Dark Ritual. Spell Pierce. I accept. I cannot pay for that. Could actually be a Delver deck with Spell Pierce seeing play here. See what this fetch land tells us. There's white. This is going to be an end of brainstorm. An end of brainstorm turn for efficiency. Could be, yeah, facing down something like a Stoneforge Mystic here. My Passageway Seers are going to look a lot worse against that. Yeah, like, Aldra's real good against initiative creatures. And I don't have the mana to naturally just recast another one, which is super unfortunate. I think I just play Dark Depths past the turn and attempt to end of turn Dark Ritual, do my thing. I don't know, like, if I lose those land drops, though, I'm just, like, so not casting any of my cards. I haven't given my opponent a Swords to Plowshares target yet. Maybe I do need to... Okay, no counterspell. Maybe I need to give my opponent some initial targets. Give him some initial targets. This lets me make a Swamp as my land drop per turn. And makes it more likely that I can just play another Passageway Seer and try to grind out this game in a fair way. That's super unfortunate. I need any land drop here. Allows my opponent to make their land drop per turn. And another Stoneforge. Okay. That is not what I'm looking for. I can get rid of the Cauldron specifically. I think I'm going to Thoughtseize here. And this is going to be a check for a Swords to Plowshares more than anything else. That's the card that's going to beat my Dark Depths. Alright. No Urborg, so can't do the thing yet. We're playing against an anti-initiative deck, and despite the fact that I am not like the primary deck that my opponent is gearing to beat, like, these Stoneforges and Cauldras are pretty darn reasonable versus what I have going on over here. Alright, so my opponent is playing conservatively here. And I'm just pausing for a little bit to kind of, you know, jockey for some position mentally. I'll be passing the turn here with the intention of making Dark Depths at the end of my opponent's turn. The issue is that this Batterskull is some shit. Yep. So, is what, 5, 9, 10, 11 theoretical damage. I actually might have to make my Merit Lodge mid-combat and expose myself to things like Prismatic Ending and the Fairy. Right? Because, like, they will go to 21 and I will die the next turn. Yeah, so I do very unfortunately think that I have to do this here. Alright. I will block the Batterskull token. Soak up a little bit of life. We'll see if I get punished. I do get punished. Yep. This is fine. I think this game is over at this point. Like, I am down multiple lands here. My opponent has the initiative. They've got 7 power on board, and they can add 4 more with lifelink. I am going to toss in the towel here. How am I going to beat this deck? Pithing Needle on Stoneforge Mystic and Planeswalkers is reasonable. I think Currency Converter needs to come out. Vampire Nighthawks aren't exactly at their best versus things like Caldra. Initiative super backfired on me this game, although I don't know, there's a lot that I can do about that. I might play Grief as more discard. Like, I just need to punch a hole and try to kill my opponent. I could buy that. The pro-white creature is reasonable, but again, my opponent just has black germ tokens. Thorn the Mirthless is okay. I don't know that I need 2 Pithing Needles. I don't know. I don't mind them. I should probably get this other Sorin the Mirthless in here for times where I have to just grind. Go down 1 Passageway Seer so I'm not glutted at 4 mana, probably. I don't really have enough mana here for this to be a reasonable hand. Like, Thoughtseize is great, but I'm 2 lands short of being able to do this. I don't have another combo piece for this. I would rather ship this one. This can't do Urza Saga things. This can't do Dark Depths things. This hand is worse than a 5. Not worse than that 5. We're going to 4. This is a keep. 0 goes back. Needle goes back. I think I attempt to do the Thag on turn 3. I do not expect to win this game. My hands were just not reasonable. And I'm pretty confident saying this is like a 1-4 league. Like, I would be so happy if I was wrong. But I don't feel good about this matchup, especially after a mulligan to 4. Alright, no immediate Stoneforge Mystic or anything. Urborg's not a bad draw if things go wrong with the Dark Ritual. So let's go ahead and do this and pass the turn. Alright. Gotta try. I'm looking forward to gaining 20 life. I don't know about you. Alright. There's my 2020. There's my 20 life. I've just gotta try it, though. I'm not winning on my mull to 4 unless I go for that, I don't think. Like, I just need them to not have it. Yep. So even if I had waited for that Thoughtseize, things would not have gone my way. Tapping fetch lands for black, Jace the Mind Sculptor. All right, I'm done. They win. GG's. All right, so let's go ahead and wrap up this league, and let's talk about why this deck didn't fire on all cylinders. I think the primary reason is too many cards are dedicated to things that don't win the game. So within this deck list, there is, I think, one very good plan. I think the Vampire Hexmage, Dark Depths, Thespian Stage portion of the deck is quite strong, and I think most of the rest of the stuff isn't good. The Dark Rituals are not very good in this deck list, so the traditional mono black deck plays a lot of things that can be accelerated out on turn 1 with Dark Ritual. So, for example, you can Dark Ritual into Thoughtseize plus Dauthi Voidwalker. You can you can Dark Ritual into one of your 4 opposition agents, into Thoughtseize and him. And most of the times with this deck list, the Dark Ritual was a one-time burst of mana that didn't actually lead to me winning the game. I think that the currency converters, pithing needles, shadow spears, and such that exist in the deck list oftentimes clunked up the hands. I think the Urza Sagas were not playable without Ancient Tomb. There were too many times where I had an Urza Saga and a Dark Depths, and I couldn't really tap for the appropriate mana amounts, and the disappearing land problem was real. Urborg wasn't enough to kind of patch together the mana base here. Frequently found myself not having the mana that I needed or needing to mulligan. So despite the fact that we did have 24 lands here, since 4 of these innately don't tap for mana, it didn't really feel like I was playing 24 lands. I think this deck is better if it chooses to kind of focus in a different direction. The Vampire Nighthawks weren't holding their own versus the Delver decks. The fact that this still just dies to a Lightning Bolt at the end of the day, or only trades with one of their creatures, it doesn't come out ahead, means that once Expressive Iteration starts getting involved, you don't have the card advantage that you need. So I think with this deck list, you needed to zero in on some aspects of this. I think trying to play like this discard and this Merit Lodge plan and this like lifelinky like Vampire Nighthawk Sheoldred plan and the initiative stuff all at the same time left this deck list being spread too thin. This build gets a thumbs down from me. While I liked it on paper at the beginning of the video, after kind of feeling how the matches played out, I don't think this is very viable. Maybe you can up the land count. Maybe instead of Dark Ritual, this wants to be like a Mox Diamond or a Chrome Mox deck list. I think the currency converter package needs to go, like, or honestly, like, maybe if you take the Urza Saga package out of the deck, like, this deck can become more reasonable. Like, you just play 4 more lands, like, maybe, like, 2 Castle Locktwains or something like that, so you get a little card advantage, maybe a couple of Wastelands of your own or something. Like, maybe you just play a couple more real lands, and then, like, you don't have to be on Currency Converter and multiple Pithing Needles anymore. I'm not exactly sure, but I don't think this direction is worth strongly exploring. It was a cool idea. There are some mono black initiative decks out there. I think there were 2 in the 5.0 deck list from the last week or 2 by the time that you see this video. Yeah, I think that's kind of where I'm at. I hope, regardless of the fact that I got bullied, you all enjoyed the video. If you did, click the like button on the way out. It helps out a lot. And any thoughts that you have about deck building here, please throw them in the comments. I love to read them, and I'm sure Damien would as well. All right, that's all I've got for you. Remember, come back tomorrow for a different sort of video from me. All right, see ya.